Now it's time for our More to the Point segment with Downriver Darrin Moore to talk about another great conservative or libertarian book of great ideas. So, what are we going to talk about this week?
Well, do you want me to start with the name of the book?
Well, we could do the old Paul Harvey thing.
And soon you'll know the name of the story. Over the last couple weeks, Jay, we have been examining a related chain of books, link by link. Albert J. Nock's book titled Our Enemy the State was written in 1935, and it asks a question that C.S. Lewis attempted to answer in 1943 with his book The Abolition of Man, as well as in a sci-fi novel, That Hideous Strength. The book we're discussing today was first published in English in 1932, and it is another link in that chain with Nock, Kirk, Nisbet, Lewis, and Weaver, and they all link back to Burke and Tocqueville in the previous centuries. But let's not get too far back in the past.
Yeah, we're getting lost in the past.
If you had a magic McFlyin DeLorean that could travel back in time, in what period of history would you have liked to have lived?
Well, good question. People like to imagine themselves reincarnated from some era, but it's hard to argue against the refrigerator.
Exactly.
You know, Darrin, I don't think it's really a contest because today there are so many more options. We couldn't even dreamed about some of the things we can do today.
That's
and
right.
We have so much freedom across the board. To go back would be number one, limiting our options, but a very, very different world.
Yep. Now, Jay, consider this. Europe was never able to reach a population greater than 180 million people until about the year 1800. The population surged to 460 million by 1914. So why, after thousands of years, did the population double in 1 century?
You know, that's a question that's asked over and over again, and I wish our liberal friends would think about it. What's the answer?
Because capitalism solved the plenitude problem, and science solved the medical or the hygiene problem.
Absolutely. The previous eras had diseases that would wipe out thousands of people in a short period of time, and people had absolutely no idea what was going on. When's the last time we had a plague?
When's the last time we had a famine? People from the Middle Ages would look on our age and think that we have solved poverty and scarcity.
Well, we have. At least in the West we have, it seems. Even our poor, even the poorest of us, they have TVs, electricity, food delivered to stores down the block.
Yep. And because our poor tend to be fat, one could say that the difference between the poor in the West and the Third World can be measured in waistlines. Submitting the seed of humanity to the nourishing combination of technical knowledge and liberal democracy, that is to say, property rights and market capitalism, has given us a quality of life and a program of possibilities that is superior to all others known to history. This is the height of our times, Jay, a period beyond all known fullness, and it has permitted the tripling of the human species in a single century.
That's exactly right. And that's why the Third World really needs to adopt some kind of market capitalism.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot more opportunities today than there ever were. It used to be, it seemed, you could count the possible occupations on one hand. Shepherd, hunter, warrior, craftsman. That's about all your choices, really. So what are we missing? What are we not seeing that there's so much unhappiness here?
Well, plenitude can be an optical illusion, which leads us to neglect the future, our author writes. The problem of plenitude is hubris, that deadly combination of arrogance and ignorance. Now take man's enduring hubris and make him richer than all previous generations. Then multiply him exponentially and put them all in a democracy. Now what have you got?
You got a mob.
Precisely. And this brings us to the title of the book, Jay. The Revolt of the Masses by Jose Ortega y Gasset. The world used to be governed by minorities for thousands of years. Now it's governed by majorities, or by people who govern in the name of majorities. The mass man is triumphant and universal. But here lies the danger. We are beginning to see how the old grand edifice of civilization is like a very old tree that looks strong from the outside, but for years has been becoming hollow. As Ortega says, we are beginning to realize that these times of great plenitude and freedom are dead within.
Yeah. This is not the first time a great civilization has decayed from within.
Here's what Ortega said has happened. Heap after heap of human beings have been dumped onto the historic scene at such an accelerated rate that it has become difficult to saturate them with traditional culture. It is this mass of hollow men being dumped onto the scene that Ortega suggests could capsize us all.
Okay, so Ortega's talking about the masses. What's he mean by that?
Well, he means the average man, as he is undifferentiated from other men, possessing the traits that repeat in the generic type. The label mass man does not coincide with upper or lower classes either, or the middle class. It is not rare to find among the poor and the working men what we may call nobly disciplined minds. Alternatively, we can find plenty of rich people who exhibit the mass mind.
Yeah, Charlie Sheen, for example.
Yeah. Ortega suggests that it is impossible to educate the mass man. The masses can only be taught an avocation or technique of modern life.
And in Charlie Sheen's case, he can't even be taught to act.
It seems that all mass man wants is a job, and outside of that, he wants to be constantly entertained. Today's mass man has formidable appetites and powerful means of every kind for satisfying them. These are the tools for an intenser form of existence. Everyone seems today to be craving experiences that are extreme and intense, always more exciting. Everything is just for the thrills.
Yeah, new, different, exciting. Yeah, that's for sure. And why do you think that is?
Well, some of it, Jay, I suspect, is that we have forgotten how to enjoy. Perhaps we've forgotten how to create and maintain the things that produce genuine joy. So therefore, thrills, chills, and spills fill the void.
I think people have said that we're actually kind of numb from all the stimulation.
Yeah, it's an endless stream of sensation that comes from without rather than from within. Ortega suggests that what we may not be realizing is that the scope of life is suddenly so much greater today that it has overflowed all the channels and threatens to wash away all principles, norms, ideas, and even truths handed down by tradition. Perhaps, Jay, as the world is rapidly becoming more complex instead of growing old, mankind is growing into immaturity.
It's bizarre. They don't want to get wise. They want to get forever young.
And what's that old line that we're happier in our old age because the youth sow wild oats, but the old grow sage? It's a pretty good line, isn't it? God, who wrote that line? Anyhow, Ortega suggests that it is as if a primitive kind of man has suddenly risen en masse into the very midst of a very old and civilized civilization. Primitive people camouflaged behind the latest inventions. Trousered apes is what C.S. Lewis calls them. What is happening, Ortega says, is the vertical invasion of the barbarians.
Yeah, so basically the West is, we're just a bunch of spoiled brats, right?
Well, I'm not saying that, and nor was Ortega. He was saying that mass man is full of them. And he's pointing out that mass man is in the majority and in charge. Both political parties cater to the mass man.
You know, this can get a little bit confusing. So let's talk again. Exactly what is the mass man?
Well, perhaps, Jay, it would be easier if I shared with you Ortega's example of the opposite of what mass man is. What Ortega calls the select man. After all, the select man, these people, are the key to the whole messy problem of the masses.
The whole messy problem of the masses. I have to deal with that every single day. Okay, keep going.
Okay. The mass man demands nothing special of themselves, but live every moment what they already are. No effort towards perfection, mere buoys that float on the waves. On the other hand, Jay, the select man demands more of himself, piling up difficulties and duties. He lives in essential servitude to others, the noble life. The select man is urged by an interior necessity, a perpetual striving from within to appeal to some standard beyond and superior to himself.
So these select men seem to embody the Christian ethic and standards as decreed by God?
Yep. Whereas the mass man, on the contrary, is his own priest and professor of ethics, as Richard Weaver would later say. But let's not forget that many Christians and Republicans are part of the mass. The mass is everywhere, Jay, and not everything that is the mass is bad. From the plenitude came the multitude, came the masses, and then that multitude took over the plenitude. But Jay, here's the rub. What if that multitude that has taken over has no idea how to create the plenitude?
Well, that's exactly what happened at the Soviet Union.
That's right. If you want to make use of the advantages of civilization, but you're not prepared to concern yourselves with the upholding of civilization, you're done.
Oh, yeah, completely finished. I see what he's saying. He's saying the masses make the mistake in believing that the order will always be there, like the air we breathe. They take history for granted.
And so they think they can constantly turn the whole thing over like an Etch-a-Sketch and try some new social experiment whenever they want without doing any permanent damage.
So he's really predicting a return to barbarism.
And Ortega predicts for Europe in 1930 that, quote, 30 years will suffice to send our continent back to barbarism. Unquote.
Yeah, and it didn't even take a decade after that before the continent was turned inside out by the Second World War.
That's right.
In America, we are very fortunate because we've been relatively free, and we've had free markets and capitalism. So we have led the world, while old Europe struggles with a mixture of socialism and fascism/capitalism and misery and multiculturalism. And they're beginning to see that the riots are almost as bad as South Central L.A.
Can't we all just get along, Jay?
Yeah, can't we? Yeah.
But we can also surely see parallels to what was happening in Europe before the war. That kind of collectivism has crept into our land of the free and the home of the brave. And while we seem to be on a collision course with fiscal collapse because of our out-of-control entitlement spending, we have just stepped on the gas and doubled down with Obamacare.
We've done more than step on the gas. I think we've lit the fuse. Mm-hmm. So really, what's the solution? What does Ortega think we should be doing?
Well, that's a really good question. The guy analyzing the problem isn't always the right guy to ask for solutions, Jay, and this book is a perfect example of that. The prescription that Ortega attempts at the end of the book was for Europe only, and his solution is atrocious. He suggested something akin to the European Union. But ironically, he wrote in Chapter 13 that the greatest danger is the state. He foresaw that mass man will tend to demand that the state intervene immediately and undertake a solution directly with its immense and unassailable resources. The state would crush and absorb all the spontaneous social effort in our communities. A bureaucratized country will have people living for the state.
Anyone who pays taxes knows how much of their year is spent working to pay for taxes. We too often really lose sight of the fact that living for the state is really a kind of slavery.
Mm-hmm. That's what state intervention leads to, Jay. The people are converted into fuel to feed the machine, which is the state. The skeleton eats up the flesh around it.
We're back to Soylent Green again.
Yes, we are. It is kind of like eating our own, isn't it?
Yeah.
And in the long run, Jay, it will take a bigger remnant of men who yearn to live free and live by a higher standard. They will present the world with their better example. It will take the cultivation of mass men into select men. And I'm hard on the masses here, but I'm actually from the masses myself. I'm trying to become a select man. I'm trying to pursue those things. So we shouldn't totally disregard the folks in the masses because those people can be our allies. We don't need to have...
Oh, yeah, ordinary folks.
Exactly.
So the book is Revolt of the Masses by...
Jose Ortega y Gasset.
Great. Thanks, Darrin. Thanks for being on again. It's great.
Thank you, Jay. It's my honor.